I feel like the fan base, for the most part, seeing the reaction on social media, their biggest concern right now with the Orioles is the bullpen. We brought up the numbers, and I get the knee-jerk reactions, and I get, you know, there's been some situations where you're like, what is going on? But I feel like there are many out there that think this is one of the worst bullpens in baseball. And that's just simply not the case with, we don't just stat watch. We're watching the games. We're seeing what they do as well. And it is frustrating when you have a closer or a middle reliever come in, you have the lead, your starter puts a good start together, and then the game, snap your fingers, it's gone. It's understandable. But in looking at the numbers, this is, where'd you go, Rip? He's gone.
All right. Well, keep going.
Looking at the numbers before, or I think it was after last night's game, or before the delay happened. I just want to bring up some numbers just to rattle off, because I feel like people are looking and they're like, this bullpen stinks. They're not great. We can't win a World Series with them. And then I'm going to ask you that question after this, Rip. But ERA, these are the categories that they're top 10 in right now. And this was last night, okay? So I don't know. Those numbers obviously changed today with everything. But ERA, they were 6th. Win percentage, they were 5th. Wins, they were 6th. Losses, 2nd. And that's in a good way. Saves tied for 6th. Innings pitched, 2nd fewest. Hits 1st. Runs 3rd. Earned runs 3rd. Home runs tied for 7th. Walks 5th. Hit by pitch tied for 3rd. Strikeout 6th. Whip is tied for 4th. And strikes to walk ratio, they're 6th. And that's per StatMuse. And that was last night. So we're not looking at a god-awful bullpen right here. We're looking at a bullpen that, okay, maybe at the deadline, they do add another arm. It's kind of a wait-and-see thing, because you talked about earlier, Rip, with the injuries, with, what could happen down the line. Maybe they're looking at the deadline and they're like, okay, we do need another arm. It's like, we are still in May. We're looking at that. They're not, making a playoff push right now. Obviously, they're trying to win as many games as possible to make that playoff push, but it's a long season, 162 games. So couldn't they potentially add some talent to the bullpen? Absolutely. But that's my question to you. Do they need another arm? Do you feel confident that this bullpen right now, Zach, Kevin, this could go for you as well, with what they have, can win them a World Series down the line?
I mean, I will say, Rip, after this we'll get. I will say, me personally, I think they need one more piece. And I've said this before. I don't think it necessarily needs to be that shut down closer. Boom, he's in. You give up a bunch of top prospects. You go get the top guy. You go get a Mason Miller type guy, a Presley type guy. Although the Astros are playing good ball now, don't know if they'd move on from Presley anymore. A Helsley, the Cardinals fans, I've seen them talk about Helsley a lot, potentially getting traded. I don't know if you need to go get the guy type, but I think the Orioles will make a trade for someone who can pitch in the 7th, 8th inning. Whether it's, I've said before, more of a Shintaro Fujinami trade where it's a few weeks prior to the trade deadline, not necessarily against the line. They go out and make the last second deal, big splash. I could see them getting a guy early July, late June, if they feel like the bullpen needs it, especially after that stretch of they finish up 43 games in 45 days. We talk about reevaluating players more towards the middle of the season. That's going to show you a lot of where this bullpen is. And it might not be that you're concerned about how they're pitching. It might be that, hey, a lot of these guys got way more innings on them than they should at this point. We need people to come help at least the rest part of the bullpen. C-Money, you're the man.
And Rip, you can touch on this, allude to this, because we just talked about this as well. Last year with the O's, you knew what you were getting before Felix Bautista's injury. You knew that Cano was going to come in as a setup guy and Bautista was going to come in and shut it down. And that's why those two guys were all-stars, because they were phenomenal. They were a great 1-2 punch to have in the bullpen. Now, I agree with C-Money. It's the roles you feel like you're watching and you don't know who's going to come in at any given time. You don't know what the roles are. And Rip, can you kind of talk about this a little bit more?
Yes, I would love to discuss it more. I don't know if you guys can even see my face with the C-Money thing.
Thank you, C-Money. take it down.
Yeah. And maybe, yeah.
Put you on the main one.
Yeah. I was going to say, well, I mean, you can, but I thought, can someone slide me over, Zach?
Yeah.
Cinnamon,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Good kid. Good kid. Look, that is the one thing I'd say right now when we just talked about this rock, it is, what do you do? It's like, well, you ride with the guys that you have because you need to figure out who can handle the situations. They've done a great job. But having said that, when you look at bullpens, the one thing that the Orioles don't have is defined roles. So when you know who your closer is, hey, you're getting the ball every time. And I do think Kimbrel's getting back to getting that spot. It seems like that's where it's going back to. But it makes it easier for a bullpen to know, hey, we're up by X amount of runs and it's your time to throw. Hey, Cano's the 8th inning guy, Batista 9th. It's set. When the Royals won the World Series, they had a 7th, 8th, and 9th inning guy. Now, all three of those guys were nasty. And actually, Greg Holland, the guy that closed out the World Series, humble brag, I did hit a home run off of him when he was trying to rehab, not throwing 95-mile-an-hour, fastballs with a deadly split, but your boy still got lucky and hit a baseball pretty far. But what I'm trying to say is when you have really good options, you want to try to put them in roles to have going forward. That's something the Orioles don't have. Okay, so when you look at that, I would love to see if we get to July, because that's honestly what I tell people. I think in July, that's where you need to kind of bear down and go, all right, who are we putting in these situations? Because right now it's kind of by committee. We're playing matchups. So I would personally love to see the Orioles have Cano stay in a setup position. If Kimbrel's going to be your 9th inning guy, or have some other guy that you know is going to be in that position. I know that's not the Orioles' philosophy with the bullpen. Hyde likes to play a lot of matchups, but I do think that alleviates a lot of stress. It alleviates a lot of unpredictability. And especially for players, it's easier to know what you need to do when you know what your role is going to be. But the Orioles have done a great job of knowing, hey, we could throw you any of our guys, it seems like, in the 7th inning or later. Every single one of them. You have to be ready for it. So that is one thing I'd monitor. And I'll be honest too, I do think in my gut they will make a move when they address things. But I don't know if you guys probably talked about the John Means stuff. There's so much variance that's going to happen here in 2 months. So keep that in mind. When everyone's saying you got to reset, you got to give up on guys, give other people chances. I know it stinks. Struggling stinks for certain players offensively, pitching-wise, but you don't want to deplete your depth if you don't have to. And that is the biggest concern that you can have, is losing depth when you have to deal with injuries, because you're hoping to get to July and say, who do we have left? What do we have to work with? And then from there, you go, let's go and attack this accordingly. Because if Means is out, well, if Means is out, how long is he out? Does it give Cade Povich an opportunity to come up and pitch? Or do we have to look outside of the organization? Well, are our relievers healthy? Oh, maybe someone's not pitching good. Do we have someone in-house to fix it? Or do we need to go out and get it? You guys see the trend here, what I'm saying.